It's like a probable garage, and I'm working on designing and figuring out and building the layout of how I'm going to use this shipping container. I'm actually starting this video while I'm still working on stuff because it's wet today and I can't work on that. So I might as well get other stuff done. As I'm sure I said in the video, so I scaled this back to make it watertight and stabilized, which hopefully by the end of that video I did. So now I can start building in here. I'm going to have to build around future repairs to the rest, but that shouldn't be too difficult. So in here is your standard 20-foot shipping container, which is actually like about 19 feet long, and I'm not sure quite how wide, but it's not actually 8 feet. Like these are 20 by 8, but that's the exterior dimension, not the interior dimensions. And my plan for this space is mostly just deep storage, but also my woodwork area, which is mostly like for house repair framing type woodwork, is going to get moved over here to get it out of the garage and give me some more space in there. So the current bench that's in there, and I'll show it to you, there's 3 pieces to it right now. There's the main bench, which has an inset so that the chop saw is at its table is at bench height, so I can use the bench itself to support the wood. There's just a piece of wood over an opening, and then on the other side there's another piece of bench that's got some shelving. That's actually, I just realized when looking at it again, it's actually built, one side of it is the wall, so that when I take it out is going to have another side built so that it's freestanding. But that's all about 9 feet long and it's about 2 feet deep. So the plan is to put that all here with the chop saw here, because if I need to cut anything, I can swing the door open and hang it out the side. I may look at that chop saw bench, and if it's not difficult to do, I may take it apart and rebuild it with the chop saw offset to the right side rather than the left side, so that if I just need to chop a small board or a small amount off a board, I don't have to open the door, because I'll have 1.5 feet, 2 feet, whatever it is, to the left of it. Other things that I need to store related to that is all of my wood storage, all the offcuts and bits and pieces and whatnot. You know, let me show you all that. So this is the area I'm talking about. As you can see, it's a dumping ground. Part of this goal is I want to free up this for car and more mechanical work, but also if this isn't a woodworking area I rarely use inside the garage, I do a lot of car stuff in, it's not going to end up with all the car stuff dumped on it. So it'll be easier to, when I need to cut a board, to not have to clear all this crap out. So this is the main one. This is the one I was talking about, that I may flip it and rebuild it the other way if it's really easy to do, so that this is over here. And if that looks like it's going to be a pain, I'll leave it for now and completely rebuild it later with the saw set over as hard to this side as possible, so that I'll have the maximum this way and I'll still have plenty that way. And then this here, that there, and the long stuff there all need to get out of here. This is always a mess because I always end up with more offcuts than, there's a little box built in that it's supposed to sit in, but it's always more full than that. It's also extended over into here. And then all this big plywood stuff doesn't obviously fit anywhere over here. So it just ends up either leaned against the car, which I hate, or leaned against the shelves, which means every time I need to get something, it ends up leaned against the car. And then this is designed for like long 2x4s and other, big lengths that won't stand vertically, which is one of the things I have to think about because my height is so much less in there. With all of that, there's a bunch of stuff to consider in terms of like how I'm building things and whatnot. One thing is the chop saw that I have usually is folded up and tucked in here where that little cart is right now. I've already moved that out there because I was using it for cutting. But the very end of its legs, when it's folded up, is about here. It's like almost even with the top of this, but it won't tuck under. So what I'm going to do is put another 2x4 under all the feet when I put it out there, so that it raises this up just enough that the saw fully slides under and is completely under there, because that'll just tuck it away neater. The dead space behind it may end up storing something. Maybe even those buckets back there are the fluid for the parts washer. There's like one empty one and one half full one. And I'm keeping both of them because when I need to drain this, I need something to put it in because that's toxic, chemical-y stuff. This is a little, the red stuff you can see in here is a little rollout cart that I never use because the chop saw is in the way. So when I rebuild this, I want to have that more accessible. And then these are like painting supplies and accessories, plumbing bits. There's an electrical bits one. This is all my plumbing tools. This is all of my, no, that's plumbing tools. That's electrical, whatever. And then back there is some wire and a big snake. So this is all stuff, and then this is just offcuts of wood. This is all stuff that I rarely use, but I need to have accessible right away when I need to get at it. And it's behind all this. It's always a pain in the ass. I have to pull bins out to get to bins. So if this is in there, whether under this or in a different way, that'll be way more accessible because it'll be on an aisle. Just reach in, grab it, get it out. So that'll be more accessible. The chop saw will be more put away under that, you know. That's my secondary saw. That's a sliding compound miter saw. That's just a compound miter saw, but it's got a bigger blade and it's a little bit more precise. So that's why I have two. I also got that one stupidly cheap. This stuff over here, those bins don't have anything in it. A bunch that stuff's probably going to stay. The vacuum pump I borrowed from a friend. It'll find a place to live. But all of this, or something equivalent to this, needs to be out there. But then we get to all of this stuff. So my plan is, these are 2 feet deep. And I did some measuring. If I haven't already showed it on a video, I have some bowling alley surface stuff that I picked up free that's going to be all of my shelf tops. That one cut in half is, with legs, is probably going to be like 23 inches wide. So if I build that on one side and I have this on the other side, I end up with a really wide aisle. So I can bring stuff out pretty far. Not a full foot, but most of a foot, I think. And still end up with a 3 foot wide aisle, which should be plenty. So my thought is I'm going to take these benches, bring them out there, but I'm going to build out behind them a framework that isn't a full wall, but that has some 2x4s coming down that are attached to the floor in such a way that these can't be slid back. These will probably also be screwed to the floor out there, but it'll leave a dead space, 6-8 inches maybe. And that means all of this stuff, all the big sheet stuff, can, when the doors open, all of that stuff can get slid in behind and take up that space. And that functionally is a no wasted space situation because it doesn't matter that this is all out a little bit more, but it gains me storage for all of that stuff, and it can be plenty long. You know, I can put a full 8 foot sheet of something because this is like 9 feet. And that just gives me plywood storage for basically nothing. And then the top of that, you know, you figure with the framing and whatnot, now we're talking like 10 inches because we're like talking, with the framing, we're talking like, you know, now we're around 10 inches. I can use that as the basis to build a shelf out above that. And it doesn't have to be super big, you know, super high up. And that can give me a space for all of my long lumber. All of the, you know, 2x4s, long pieces of that, maybe even this stuff, I don't know exactly. And then now I've stored all of my long lumber and all of my 2x4s in almost a null amount of space. And then all that leaves, after all of that, is the odds and ends. And I think at that point, what I can do is off the end of this, do the same thing like I've got here where I frame out an area on the floor, and that can all sort of tuck in there, but it'll be the long way rather than the wide way. And the next shelving unit over will be the other side of that. And I think that probably be enough for all this. I also have to go through and cull. Part of moving this all that I'm actually really grateful for is every single thing I need to move becomes, is it worth putting this in the new place? Or do I get rid of it? And that's actually really useful because now I get to, if I have to move every single piece of wood, I guarantee you there's going to be ones where I'm like, why the heck am I moving this? Yeet. And that'll free up some space. And then, so that's one of the big things I need to build in there. The other thing that's going to happen is all of this here is coming out. I want this back to the wall. There's plans for in here more, but I'll get to that because there's going to be a whole other video of me revamping in here once I have the space. So let's go back out there. All that woodworking stuff is going to go back here. The bump out for the stuff, the top shelf, that may involve having to figure out something different with the lights. I like where they are right now because they're screwed into the square corner tube and there's no screw going out to the outside. If I move them more towards the center, I start running into problems of putting holes and stuff. But I may be able to build a bracket across that holds the lights or something. Future problem, if it becomes a problem. Next thing, it's all the awkward stuff. The welder's not going to live out here. It was out here while I was doing repairs. But like my big ass fan, the pressure washer, which is not going to live out here 24 year round, but would live out here during the summer because I don't want it to crack the pump during the winter. I just got gifted this by a friend, but that's going to live out here. There's some other stuff, like I said, the engine hoist and engine stand. All that needs a place to live. So what I'm thinking of doing is wherever my bench depth ends up being on this side, continuing down this side with the shelving like that, at least the first shelf. Maybe the other shelves will be less deep, I don't know, we'll figure that out later. But put that at, whatever height will hold the tallest of all that stuff. And then all of that can live against this wall. And this right here, the main frame of this, and the edge of that crate are about where I would be to have a 3-foot aisle. This is a rough approximation of the depths of the shelves based on the bowling alley stuff, and then this is just moving this out until the space between them is about 3 feet. And that's a plenty big aisle, plenty of room. And that gives me from the wall to the outside of that frame 33 inches. So if you figure 24 inches for the counter off of that, that still leaves me 9 inches, which when we talked about, 8-inch depth, it's close enough to what I was talking about, 8-inch depth total for a 6-inch space for the plywood to sit, plus the supporting wall. Should all work out just fine. So that's that plan. That's that. This area is going to be the last part built, partially because I have to build that, and I have to build the wood storage, but also it'll give me maximum, okay, what's left that doesn't fit on the normal shelves over here that I need to make a space for design area. This wall, like I said, it's going to be fairly normal. Oh, since we're talking about this wall, take you outside. This is the bowling alley stuff that I was talking about. This to the center hole, 21 inches. The legs on the wall side can be recessed into the wall cavities. The legs on this side will need to stick out. So 1.5 inches for that. That's where I got to about 23 inches. That stuff should be plenty strong over that depth for what I'm going to be storing on it. So that's the rough layout plan. The other thing that I need to plan for is power out here. This is not going to be permanently hooked in for a bunch of reasons. I don't want to have hardwired to movable structure. So right now I have a light and a power strip. And I think that might be all I need. I think the power strip might need to get moved once I've built all that stuff. And I don't know quite where the lights are going to fall, but I think that's plenty from here. These two lights, tons of room in here. If one of them is over the woodworking area, it'll be all the light that I'm going to ever need in here. But I also want the power out here to be pretty much continuous. I don't want to have to open the door, drag an extension cord out, plug it in. I want to be able to come out here, hit a switch, power. If the power strip is easily reachable the minute you walk in, I don't need to add a separate switch in here. If it isn't, I will wire up a switch block and plug. And then off the back of that switch and plug, I will have a piece of extension cord. And the current idea, when I'm building out this, the patch that's going to go right in the front here, which you've already seen, is going to have a little dead space. But where those extra boards are, I think what I'm going to do is not secure one of them down, like screw it down, and carve a U in it that will both be where a cord can run and be a finger hole so I can pick it up, and then I can run the extension cord out and under. The other possibility is I can cut out this vent here, and then on the outside there's this, which I can potentially just cut out some of this and basically cut the one end off an extension cord, feed it up in and through, and put the end back on it, or have that be going into that plug box. And either way, what I'll have is the male end of an extension cord, either coming out the bottom or coming out the top. And then on this wall of the garage, I'll put a waterproof plug box, the cover, so that there'll either be a cord that loops over there or a cord that comes up and over something. And then that'll mean constant power out here. I may make that a switched circuit, so out in the garage, I can turn off the power to out here if I want to. I don't think I'm going to need to do that, but it might be nice to. Either way, that'll give me all the power I'm going to ever need out here. All right, I got this free, and it reminded me I wanted something else of why I want to move this is the sawdust that the saw produces, because it's not just on the bench, it's on the light switch, it's on this, it's all in here, it's all over the floor. So it'll be nice to get the sawdust producing equipment out of the place I also now do a shit ton of welding in. I did way less welding when I originally built this shop. Well, I'm definitely at the make things worse before I make them better stage. There's piles everywhere. As you can see, this one's been flopped back and forth. Like I said, the idea is just to give me room to cut short stuff, because the plan is to put this right up against the closed door. So I needed just that extra little bit. So if I just need to lop a little bit off something, I don't have to open the door, because that was such a short distance. This has been rebuilt to be freestanding. Essentially added the leg on this side. I adjusted the shelves a little bit because I didn't quite like their positioning. And then this is just a scrap because it's the only thing I had right now. I'm sure when I cut everything else, I'll have another piece that'll fit the full length, but that was just something to go here because I didn't want to, I couldn't really offset the top, and I wanted something there that'll keep stuff from rolling off that edge. That is just to keep the legs together for right now. Once it's in its final place, it's actually going to get screwed in, but again, it's going to get doubled up so it's taller. I just didn't do that because I only had so much right now to cut, so I will deal with that later. So at this point, they're all ready to go over there. I'm just waiting for my partner to get home. We're going to put them over there and roughly put them in their place so I can kind of see where everything is, and that'll help me with the rest of the planning and help me be able to start working in here. All right, so I got this in place. It hasn't been raised up yet to fit the saw underneath it yet, but I just wanted to be able to visualize it properly. This is where the plywood rack is going to go. Partner and I were working for a little bit, built my first set of shelves. The only real mess up we made is I drilled the holes for this. I measured and drilled the holes for this at the same as the other ones, but the other ones are up slightly on the thing, so there's a shim under it. But this is the shelf design. As you can see, two are recessed into those. That one's recessed, and then this one's here. The next shelf will butt up against that. I did it this way so that both shelves can share one. If I put it here, I would have needed to use more supports. The bowling alleys pieces need to be flipped. We just stuck them in real quick, and then I realized they're beveled on one side and not on the other. The laminate, unfortunately, is coming up in what was the middle. Now the back on the opposite side, but that's okay. When I screw it down, I should be able to screw that down. The reason it looks like this is there's going to be a third shelf, which we didn't make yet because we have to cut another one of these. And then it's tall at the back because I think I mentioned I need somewhere to store all my like trim, like house trim, which is all just super long lengths of thin stuff. And figuring out my shelf heights, the thought was 24 inch, 24 inch, 24 inch shelf heights. And then that would leave me a 10-inch gap at the top to put all that stuff on. And then I realized I was wasting an entire shelf on it. So what I'm doing instead is 24-inch shelf for tall stuff, 17, 17 for bin height, then this one, and this is another 24 total. But what I'm gonna do is put, you know, something sticking out from here, bracket something, maybe pull it away from the wall, stick a 2x4 there, whatever. And that's gonna be where the trim sits. If I need to, I'll take a strip of that bowling alley stuff and put it across if the trim is sagging really bad. I suspect it will be, but we're gonna figure that out later. And that'll get me 4 whole shelves plus room for the trim, which is, you know, maximum space. So I'm really happy with this for 2 reasons. 1, my idea worked. And 2, as soon as I flip those shelves over and screw them down, I can start moving stuff out of here. Which is great, because I can't do anything in the garage because all the stuff's still in the garage. I can't do anything out here because I can't put it anywhere, has been the problem. And as you can see, it completely misses the area that needs rust repair. I think this is just, yeah, that's just surface rust. So when the next one goes in, its leg is going to be here. So that's going to be completely unencumbered by any of this framework. So I can do the rust repair or get access to the back to paint it or whatever without having to move any shelves. I might just have to pull some stuff out. So that's fine. And then the next 6-footer is not going to come anywhere near that over there. Another night, my partner's not available to help me tonight, so I'm going to have to get a little more inventive. I was able to build out the last frame. I actually cut the wood earlier today, then had to go buy screws because I was out. Getting it up wasn't too bad. I propped up one end on the board and that let me get it all screwed in place. Now I have to cut the surface for it. That's where it's going to get interesting. But I think because it already has holes in it, that I should be able to position it with the cut line hanging over the edge and screw it down, and I should be fine. It's just the only part that's going to suck is it's going to want to do this. So maybe I'll screw a support through one of the other holes at the back. I also raised up all of this. So this fits under, but unfortunately it immediately hits this leg here. So not as helpful as I would hope. But at least it, you know, is mostly behind, and I will figure out a solution for that later. So the thing that I did realize when we were cutting stuff is this shouldn't be out to the end. This should be as far back as the guide is there, preferably as accurately as possible, because when we were cutting something that was particularly long, it actually hit this, and we had to do some weird maneuvering to manage to cut it. So this is the wrong length. The wood should be able to hang out further. This is going to be the loose board section, which should pretty much all be leaned to the back. So that area should be open. Alrighty, about to cut this. I've screwed it to the table, I've marked it. I made myself a little leg that's screwed in over here. Just, so I'm going to be cutting this way. That'll support this end while I'm way the heck down there. And hopefully that means I'll be able to catch it and kind of just push it up onto the other one. That's the theory anyway. Also, I built my trim shelf. I think building it, even though I built it out of the 2x3, I think that's still too big and therefore too close to the ceiling. I can move it down later. Good enough for now.
Oops.
So I just assumed these bowling alley pieces were all just like chunked off so they could lift it out of the bowling alley. And I don't know why, but I assumed that since the first one was over 6 foot, they'd all be over 6 foot. So I dragged the next one in, and 6 foot's over here somewhere. So I'm going to cut this one at 5.5, and the next set of shelving is going to be 5.5 feet. But it means I got to find one that's still 6 foot, so I can do the upper shelf over there. Little error on my part, but recoverable. Alrighty, shelf done. So this whole unit is done, except I may put a face, like some bits sticking up at the topmost bit, in case if stuff looks like it's going to slide off. That light is off because I have added this and put the power strip there, which means I can now reach the dang button. Slight problem is that that light is now directly pointed at that, so it's actually shading most of the area. So what I'm going to end up doing is moving both of those a little bit, because they'll plug into each other. So if I move them a little bit closer to each other, I can do that, and they can just be plugged in into one plug of the strip. And I can move that one enough that it's not being shaded by the thing, and I get more light in here. Not a huge deal, still enough to work. This is not part of my final whatever I build back here, because I can't build the final plywood rack and overhead rack for stuff because I still have to do the metal work, and I realize there's no way to build it that doesn't block that in. So this is going to be a temporary for now. It puts the power strip up there. I'm going to screw another piece of wood up there to put all of my long clamps, you know, this kind of stuff. Now this is completely done, which means I can fill it with stuff. So I can get a bunch of stuff out of the other space. I have 2 of the shelves here for the next one. This is the other one that was over 6 foot long. So I may cut this one down to be the 3rd shelf for that 5.5 foot unit, or I may save this one because it's long and find another short one. But either way, huge progress, good milestones. Time is it? It's 10 o'clock. My neighbors don't need to be listening to me using power tools anymore. So I will talk to you tomorrow. We're back. I have another light. Totally because it wasn't bright enough in here, not because I managed to break that one moving the lights at all. Nope, not me, not at all. Anyway, started moving stuff in here from the garage. I just haven't put that up there because I didn't want to climb up there. Started moving some of the plywood in. This is actually good because now I'm realizing that plywood rack needs to be the whole length of the bench, and probably just needs to be open because I need to be able to get stuff in and out of it. But I do need to put a backstop on this so everything doesn't fall into there. But since I still need more shelving, this is the next area. Said I was going to build this last, but I'm realizing some of the stuff I have in the garage will actually be good for over here. So these 2 shelves, which have to come out of here, are both 8 feet long, which is a good length for that shelving unit to leave me still some space for the scrap wood pile. And then either this or this can be my 3rd shelf. I'm going to be modifying the 3rd shelf. So that's the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is oh wait, what am I doing? So I have 2 heights that I need in there. One, I need to have 36 inches so it'll fit things like the big fan and the power washer and other taller stuff like that. I can't think of anything else, I don't know, but stuff that needs taller than the 24 inches. But then I also have this engine stand disassembled, and I have a hand truck. The engine stand's been over here, and that's not been a big problem other than that place is going away. The hand truck has always been in the way. So I need someplace tall enough to long-term store the engine stand and to park the hand truck being here. Now that engine stand, I measured it, and it needs about a 38-inch space. Where it is right now, it's actually tucked up under the shelf, which is totally fine. And I think I'm going to do that here. But I need some at 36 and I need some at 58. So the plan is here in the very corner, I'm going to make it 58. 54 to the bottom, 58 to the top to fit the engine stand, and then the cart will be able to just park right in front of it. That'll take care of that. And then an amount of space, I haven't quite decided yet, It's going to step down, and that shelf will be 36 inches underneath to fit all that other stuff, but give me an entire other shelf over here. And then if I do a 17-inch shelf like I did over here, I'll end up at 79 inches at the top of that upper one, which will be about here, which will still give room on the top, but it won't, you know, it'll be a little more cramped than this, but still be usable. So, 8-foot shelves, plus a little bit of bracketry, will give me that area for my scrap wood, which is plenty. I need to cut down on how much of that stuff I hang on to. So what I'm gonna do is make this my scrap wood area built against that, and we'll call that how much space I have for scrap wood, which means I can also move the scrap wood in over here. So that's my plan. I need to take the shelves out of that side, and I need to build the supports on this side. Alrighty, more shelves are in. These are the two 8-footers that were in that rack in the garage, just reused. The reason they're up here is that this corner is where the engine hoist is going to go. And I was clever in the previous location, and I was like, you know, I thought I'd strapped the engine hoist in place, but what I'd done actually is taken 2 J-hooks, screwed them to a board to the wall, hung the main, like, vertical and arm of the engine hoist on that, and then I had a strap going around, but it was just keeping the 2 legs connected to that. So I'm duplicating that here. This board is going to be what those hooks are going to go on. And on this side it's screwed there, but in this corner I didn't want to have to add another leg in a really awkward location. So what it is this piece of wood keeps it from pulling forward, and then this piece of wood is it's vertical. So that's going to lock it in place just fine. And this gave me a great idea for locking this whole thing in place, which is up here. All I had to do was put a little bit there and a little bit there of wood. This one is locked against that. This is locked against this. And this piece keeps it from going that way. And this piece keeps it from going that way. And it can't pull this one out because of that one. And it can't pull this one out because of that one. So the whole thing is completely locked in place in that corner. The other end still has some flop to it, but I'm less worried about that end because among other things, it's not going to have an engine hoist hung on it. But I really like that trick for locking it into the corner. I'm going to do that on the other one too, once I generate a few more scraps. So yeah, the engine hoist is going to go here, and then probably off of this, I'm going to build across, but this is going to be a bit deeper of a shelf. These are a little bit shorter than these. These ended up 21s. These are 19s. I don't remember why I did it that way, but at the time with these. But either way, that's what those are. And because the taller stuff that's going to be here sticks out further, I'm going to build out a probably, I don't know, 30, maybe 36-inch one here to completely have all that stuff underneath. This shelf here is a little short. It's only, I believe, 14 inches. Because it was the compromise between having this one not too tall to make this one useless, and still have this be a useful shelf, but have this one high enough to cover this stuff. So it's going to be a slightly awkward shelf, but I still get 3 shelves even if one, you know, they're not the best spacing possible. And there we go. 1 complete engine hoist, 1 complete engine stand, and the cart all securely in place. None of it able to fall out or tip outwards or whatever, except obviously the cart can be removed. And what, 2 feet? Roughly 2 feet of depth. A little bit more the wheel there, but I can put the next shelf right there and it'll be just fine. All right, last shelf in. This wood was warped so badly. This corner wanted to float about 3-4 inches above the ground. We had to push it down and screw it to the floor to get it to stay. And yes, we checked everything else. It's just that the wood is that warped. Turns out buying wood off the discount rack, not always the best choice. But that and that. Amazing progress. This is going to have to get cut out of a fresh piece of bowling alley. But yeah, look at that. That's basically done except for that. Alrighty, I got the last piece cut here. Unfortunately, thought I had more long ones, and I was wrong. This is the longest one I had left by the time I got to this, and it's a little shy, but I'm not super worried about that. Like I mentioned before, this is a bit of a short one. I think it's 14 inches? A little less, 13 and a quarter, or 13 and 3/4. But that was the compromise between getting the tall stuff under here and not having the shelf at all. That's part of why it's deeper, because I'm not quite sure what's going to end up here. It might even be sort of a workbenchy space. Really don't know, but this was the best compromise possible. I have 3 pieces left here that can be the last one over here, but I also took this stuff out of the garage. This is the same as this, where it's a little bit narrower. It's 19 versus 22. Got my wood storage area. I culled out a bunch. There's a pile out there. Probably even more here still than I need it to be. I've got my storage for tall stuff. They've got a few more things that can come out here. You can see that's, you know, up to here is unfilled. There's slate up here, so I can put like tarps or something on top of the slate that isn't going to damage it. I got most of this shelf. I got all of this. I will have all of this once I do something with the long boards. Alrighty, and I am done for now. Built one more shelving unit. This is one of those frames from those shelves in the other one. What I did is, this is 8 feet long, so it's tied in up here, so I get a long shelf up here to hold all my long wood until I build the final thing over here. And then these are those 2 5.5s coming down. The 6-footer is up here, plus a little filler piece there. This ended up spaced out from the wall a bit. Nice and simple, built just like the other one. Gave me enough storage, gave me a place for the tires. That sandblaster cabinet, which you're going to see in another video, is either going to end up against the back wall or it's going to end up here. The plan is I don't have an expectation of using it often, so it's going to live out here, and then I'll just run an air line out to it, or I'll drag it into the garage depending on how big a project I'm using it for. But I haven't finished cleaning up, but I have all of my woodworking stuff now stored over here. This is long-term temporary. That's all fine. So much cleaning. Wood storage, things have been moved out here. See, I'm already filling it up, but I've got so much space, you know, I haven't touched this. I'm really happy with how this all came out. I've got a place to do all of this, and I've already used it for all of this other building. This setup is really good. It is as good, if not better, than before, because I have infinite space that way. I have enough space this way. So that's going to be it for this for now. Obviously, this space will evolve over time, like my space always does. And if it's interesting enough, I will put it in a video. But for now, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.